My role as an urban planner and designer is to coordinate the many activities and components of our communities in ways that are compact, efficient, and sustainable. If I do my job right, I offer people a choice to be able to get around your neighborhood without a vehicle. Now, there's lots of ways we can move around, but walking is the most basic form. Walking is the way that we move from one place to the other. Almost every trip we make begins and ends while we're walking. Now, doctors know this, and they've known this for a long time. Walking is so beneficial that it's part of their prescriptions these days for a range of chronic illnesses and mental health challenges. In fact, just walking 10 to 15 minutes each day not only helps to relieve stress, but it also helps to improve your creativity. So I always wondered, if walking is in fact so beneficial, then why, particularly Americans, don't we walk more? And as a planner and urban designer, I wondered, is there something about the way that we put our communities together that precludes us from walking more? So I know that there are in fact two components to every aspect of moving from one place to the other. There's our destination and there's our journey. Now, whether you're in a car or walking or in a train or being picked up by some drone, you're going somewhere and you're moving along something. As a pedestrian, the most basic component of the journey is in fact having a sidewalk. Now, unfortunately, we don't even do that in many places. But we certainly know that we need to be entertained to get from point A to point B. And we need to improve the experience of that journey in order to get us to that destination and encourage us to move along to that destination. And unfortunately, in many of our communities, we're still delivering images like this, where we have a narrow sidewalk against fast-moving traffic and the dullest blank wall you can possibly imagine to one side, right? We force pedestrians to navigate big, wide streets and fight cars all along the process. We build buildings that, in fact, have bars that are hiding trash cans and cars, and maybe those bars are there because, in fact, they're trying to restrain something else. We build streets once, we put crosswalks in once, and we never repaint them again, forcing a pedestrian to figure out whether the trip across from one point to the other is going to be successful, or in fact, I'm going to fall into the black hole right in the middle. Put me out of my misery. So we know, in fact, all of these places were built to a very precise set of codes, rules. Now, unfortunately, many of those rules were designed for cars moving fast. We have very prescriptive rules about a car moving 35 miles an hour and the radius of the curb on the street that you're moving on in order to accommodate that vehicle. But I can count usually on one hand the number of rules that we have to make it more enjoyable to be a pedestrian. And if you're in a wheelchair, forget it. So it's about the rules. And I've known this for a very long time. And so I always wondered, is there something that we can be doing in our communities that makes that journey more enjoyable, but recognizing that there are other things that are much more unpleasant? So we visit places like this all the time. And many people come back and they're full of energy, they're full of joy, but there's a lot going on. And so one of the things that I've been trying to dissect as part of my career, my research, is that what is our reaction to a place like this? There's a lot of things that are happening, and particularly, what does our brain say about how we navigate all of those different pieces? Now, there's 30 or 40 different data points that we're trying to absorb all at one time. And in fact, our brains have shortcuts that we use. Now, in fact, those shortcuts are called prejudices. It's part of how we're built, but it helps us navigate complex environments. And those prejudices form what we call chunking. Our brain actually breaks things down into very small bits and processes them quickly. So we walk down a street like this, we know exactly what we need to do and how we need to navigate. We determine, are those trinkets on the table something I want to take a look at? I know I need to stop at Walgreens for something. I'm not sure what it was. How do I get past all of those people walking towards me? Is that guy sitting on the right there, is he hurt? Is that someone I should be scared about? Or is he just checking out his TikTok feed? Even in places that are less animated, we in fact have to fill in details. Again, our brain at work. We're trying to understand, why is that fire hydrant in the middle of the sidewalk? Is that bus stop, in fact, made only for tall people? There's the remnant of a tree trying to come up from the foundation. Is that the ancient arboreal forest that this city was born from? We fill in facts to help analyze and understand what that experience and that journey is going to be. And it's all about how our brain processes things. So many of you know our brains are largely upper brain or lower brain. Now, the lower brain is largely our autonomic functions, our immediate responses, our fight or flight. Okay? And so our lower brain manages anxiety, fear, and stress. Okay? We all know about all of those things, and a lot of times we cannot control them. They're immediate reactions, part of what our brain does. And we all know about cortisol. It's the stress hormone. Okay? Cortisol is secreted from the lower brain, and in fact, what we found out is that cortisol not only is about stressful situations, we secrete cortisol when places are dull or uninteresting. So the windswept plaza in our cities that was a requirement on that because of that code book, but will never ever be occupied by people, is dull, boring, and uninteresting. And when we have studied your brain patterns, we realize cortisol is being secreted. The same cortisol is being secreted when you're walking along a street where there's nothing along the edge of the street and the street itself is wide and dull. Now, there's a few trees there, not enough to make that change. And even walking across a parking lot, the most dull experience that we can possibly deliver in our communities, is nothing but a cortisol factory moving from one to the other. Now, one of my favorite terms, learned this a few years ago, Thigmotaxis. Thigmotaxis is a fascinating term. In fact, what Thigmotaxis is, it is the natural tendency of all mammals and most animals to hug a wall or find safety or comfort in edges, and also to know where the exit points are. Okay? So it's part of who we all are. It's how we're wired. And so the way I describe it is, it's the deer along the forest edge. Right? There's a reason why deer want to be close to the forest edge. They go out, they eat in the meadow, and then they come back, and they know if a predator enters the meadow, they can jump in for safety. We're wired exactly the same way. So when we walk along a street like this, we've got no walls, no edges, no escape routes. One side we have dull, uninteresting parking lots, and the other side we have high-speed traffic. This is the worst of the worst. Now, we don't even have to have a wide sidewalk to have a comfortable space. Just simply having storefront windows and doorways, and maybe even an awning to cover us, provides that same sense of comfort and security. And when we provide on-street parking on one side and stores on the other, then we've hit the jackpot. We have two walls that provide comfort and safety. That's Thigmotaxis. Now, let's move to the upper brain. Now, the upper brain is our logic and reasoning location. It's a little bit long. We kind of think about things. We process things in the upper brain. So this is where emotion, memory, and delight particularly are. So place cells are neurons that are formed in the hippocampus that help to pair emotions with environment. And what the most interesting thing about it is it provides us with places and memories of things that are places that are worth being at, and places that we just sort of ignore. So it sort of processes things out. So I like to use the analogy of the box of wine. All right, so step into our shoes here. All right, your good friends have just come back from a trip to Napa Valley, and they've left a box of wine on your doorstep with a note that says, "This is the best box of wine we've ever had, and we wanted you to have some." So you said, "Wonderful." You and your wife opened it up that night. You said, clearly, they thought it was wonderful. They had this great time. They gave us this great gift. And you said, "Let's see it. Let's have some for dinner." You opened it up, and you tried some. It turns out it tasted a lot like the box wine you had last night. And the reason why is because they paired their experience, their emotions, with that box of wine in ways that you'll never have. So it actually makes the wine taste better. It's the same reason why we look in an alley with trash loading and cars moving down there, and we think, no way, I'm just going to ignore it, not going to be part of my memory system. And yet we fill that same alley with tables and chairs and people and good company, and all of a sudden, we've got neurons that are being formed in our hippocampus that are reminding us of how great that place was. That's place cells. Cognitive engagement. One of the most important things as we're walking along a street, hanging out in a park, enjoying a shopping environment, relaxing in a plaza. Cognitive engagement is our literal engagement with our environment and how much our brain lights up with the things that we are presented with. If we do our jobs right, we're entertained every so often. And in fact, we know as humans, we get bored pretty easily, don't we? And so we know, in fact, that you have to be entertained and stimulated every few seconds in order to keep you moving along. The shopping malls know how to do this, and they have a science. Their job is to separate money from your wallet. And they do that by getting you into the mall quickly and making you move from one anchor to the other. Now, a good mall, if a store goes dark, do they put plywood up? No, because in fact, they know that if you travel for about 50 feet or more, you're more likely to actually turn around and head back in the other direction, which for them is lost sales, lost business. You will never make it down to the other anchor at the other end. Unfortunately, we continue to build our places like we're building plywood on day one. This is what we deliver to our communities, where we have big blank walls, and the best thing we have to offer is the mousetrap in the corner and wondering if there's anything worth seeing. A lot of people, when tested and monitored, we see that people many times will in fact cross the street for something more interesting or turn around and head back in the other direction. It's the same thing that happens, in fact, when you walk along a parking lot. Dull, uninteresting, not stimulated. Now, the Ponte Vecchio, which is one of the old shopping streets, is located in Florence, not South Carolina, Florence, Italy. Okay? It connects two major cultural anchors, the Pitti Palace and the Duomo. It's about 400 feet, which also happens to be about the same dimension as that parking lot at Kohl's. Would you rather walk the entire length of the parking lot at Kohl's or along the edge of the Ponte Vecchio and the shops? Now, what differentiates this is the depth and the sensory stimulation that we get out of it. It's like a garden. Okay? The garden has depth and breadth of experiences. There's smells and sights and sounds and urban creatures. And in fact, we know that if you are in places where you're cognitively engaged, you're in fact 5 times more likely to help somebody that's come up and asked for help. You're 7 times more likely to allow that stranger to use your phone. And you're 4 times more likely to actually walk them to the correct destination. If we are cognitively engaged, we're actually better people. So it's time we change the rules. The rules are made for the wrong things. We need to change the rules for people. We need to create our communities for people and humans that occupy them. We need to change the rules so we actually build places that have edges, that have perforations. We need to build walls and edges and places to navigate through that are comfortable and safe and enjoyable. We need to build more gardens in our communities that have these urban edges and diversity and depth and experience and sensory stimulation. And if we do that, if we change the rules, we're going to have happier brains. And if we have happier brains, I think we're going to do some more walking. Thank you very much.